都接受的话都没有问题。好的，
然后如果都不知道给老师 email 的话，那一个最简单的就是我
对，
发我的 email 是吧？然后我的 email 你们都有，所以呢，就是说可以发我的 email。OK，行，好的。
嗯，
我可能一会儿要退出来了，我这边还有别的教室可能要去一下，对不对？
好的，好的，没问题。没问题的，大概稍微没关系，算了，那就先开始吧。那就稍微先复习一下，然后顺便等一等人。我记得好像 Eric 好像还没有来，但是没关系。好，so we are just gonna briefly review Friday's lecture. It's been a while, so I figured just to review it. It's good. So on Friday we talked about classes and objects, right? And class is a class in Chinese it's called lei, right? And it's just a class, right? And it's just a class of objects, and in that class, you will have instances, right? You can create instances based on this specific class, and then instance is just called 实例, right? And then you can have class the way you define this is you do class and then class name and then column, and then you can have zero or more class variables. You can have zero or more class methods. Okay, so yeah, so it is in the class. Those methods are in default it's instance method, right? And then the way you define instance method are pretty much the same as like any other method, any other function, but the first parameter of instance method will be bounded to the color of the function, right? By I mean the color of the function, it is just the object that is calling this function, this method, right? So it should be defined at least one parameter. And you don't have to use self, but as a convention, please use self. Okay, and in Python function like something so underscores, something like this. We're gonna talk a little bit about it today. But it does have some special use. Okay, and then we will introduce it later. So yeah, one example would be the list, right? We have to deal with the list, and then we can have a random list, and then you try to sort it, and then this li is an instance, right? And then you use an instance to call that respect that method in the list class. Then you print it out and you will see it is a sorted array. Okay, and then one thing to not do is to print a list of sorts, because list of sort will just give you none, because it does not return anything. Okay, and then you have this class, class person. You can have this hair color is black, and then this init function is the function that you will call when you're trying to initialize an object, right? The way you initialize the object is just to call a class and then brackets, right? And inside of the bracket, you can pass in any kind of parameters that you need. And in this case, it is default, so it does not, you can have the option not to pass in any kind of parameters. Okay, and then yeah, you can change the name here. You can change the age using an instance, right? And then you can call this method, and then you know, you can print stuff. Okay, you can also add a field to the object. All right, so p dot skills is equal to a list, and then you know, programming, swimming, and then after you can print out that list, and then it is there. So you can also delete it, and after you delete, if you try to print it again, it will give you an error. Okay, but the skills are not being deleted, so it is still there. Okay, you can also define a function outside of the class and then make it into a method. But is it just the idea that no matter whether you use this keyword self or not, it will not automatically bound the caller of the function to the first parameter. That means you will have to do it yourself. Okay, and then yeah, you'll have to sort of manually pass in this object p yourself, right? So the syntax is sort of like p dot full and then bracket p, right? So this is self passing in an object, and this is the same. It is just using a lambda expression. And then if you don't remember the lambda expression, go review it. It is just a one line function definition. Okay, and then there's a thing called method type. Yeah, this is a function, and then you can do it from importing, you know, from types import method type, and then you can have this function here, and then you can do p dot intro, which is a function, and then you can do method type, and then you can have this. The first parameter is the function that you defined, and the second parameter is the object, right? And then this is just the method type, and then you can successfully call this function by like doing p.info and then pass in whatever content. And in this case, you can realize that you don't have to pass in the first parameter yourself. It is bounded to the object p. Okay, so that is that. You know, always try to bring self to access a function or variable. If you don't bring the self, um, you will not able to access. Like if you directly call jump, you will not be able to access it. You can do that by calling self, and you might also do. You might be able to also do that by calling the class, right? The class name, so like dog jump, something like that, right? So yeah. So yeah, here is just an example of why you actually need to add the self. Okay, and then you know, this is just a loop. So in this case, full is equal to 0, and then self dot full is equal to 6. Then you know, this full here is just a local variable, but you know, this self dot full, to be precise, I would say it is an instance variable. Okay, it is an instance variable. It is not a class variable, because class variable usually goes right after the class, right? But this is just the instance variable. Okay, and then you just print it out, and then it will just give you 6 instead of give you 0, because you know, this is a instance variable. Okay, and then you know, the self object is carried, right? If you assign a method, which is a function in a class, to some other function, or some other variable, right? And then when you call that assigned function, then you'll actually bring the self object as well, because it is carried. As you can see here, it is self parameter main.user object, and then class method, and then those are the same thing again. Okay, return self. So you can have a you can have a function that it actually returns itself, right? So that you can easily add more and more function onto it, right? So if you create an instance, then rs.grow r returns you back rs, right? So it can keep growing, and then once you print out its age, in this case it will be 13. Okay,
I don't know. So
and method methods. Yeah. So the class can actually call an instance method. So in this case, def is equal to full, and then full in global, and then bar is equal to 20. And then this here we have another full, and then we can have this print called full in bird class, and then class bar is equal to 200. Right, and then you can call full, you can print bar, and then this will give you the global ones. But if you sort of just call bird.full, that it will just be run like this, right? So print bird full in bird class, right? And then print bird.bar, then gives you 200. Okay, and then class user, you can define a walk function, and then you take self as a parameter, and then print self walking slowly. And then you can also do this. You can also call those functions using the class itself, right? You can do user.u, but you have to specify the parameter. So because this is an instance method, you have to pass in an instance so that it can run, right? So you can do user.walk, and then bracket u, right? And then it just pass in there, and then calls the work function, right? And then you can also sort of pass in a array, a string, right? And then this function will then just be like some normal function. Well, this self parameter doesn't actually do any special thing other than passing in this value, right? And then in this case itself is just array, and then you can just print it out. Okay, and then class method and static method. So you can have this function declaration, right? You can have this function declaration. Once you add class method, you can have define your own class method, right? You can just do instead of having an actual instance, you can just do class. So which in this case bird, you can do bird.fly, and then you can do bird.info, and then crazy IT or whatever, right? And then you can also use an instance, right? It does not actually an instance works anyway, but it is just that sometimes when you try to do class.fly, it does not work, so that we have to add this class method declaration. Okay, so that is that briefly. function decorator. Function decorator just means that when you try to decorate one function with another function, then it is the same as function A bracket function B, and then function B will just be replaced by the result of this function A bracket function B. Okay. So yeah, this is just a more complicated example. I'm not gonna go into very much detail since I did spend quite a lot of time on it on Friday. Okay, class namespace. So like that means in a class it is more or less the same as whatever you have in the main, or you just don't write anything, right? It can still run the code that you wanted to run, but like it is just that it is sort of a namespace, and then we don't typically do that, but this is doable. Okay, we are able to do it, but not normally. Okay, so in here we have another class, and then global function, a lambda expression, and then you can have another category function, and then use lambda to define it as well. And then, yeah, you can definitely use a lambda to, literally define your instance method. Okay, and then here is yeah, that is it for the brief review. Um, and I am gonna go into some practice questions. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I will wait until like 10:25. Okay. Yeah. I'll wait until 10:25, and then if there is any kind of question, let me know. Okay, so I am just gonna go into this this exercises. Okay, um, so write a Python named student with two attributes: student name, marks, and modify those attributes value of the set class, and print the original and modified values of set objects. Right. So this is a pretty simple one, I think. Right. So you sort of like do a class student, and then you have two field. One is called student name, the other is called mark, right? And then s is equal to student, that is just creating an instance of that student. We can do print as dot student name, yeah, and then print s dot mark, and we'll just print out the name and the mark. And then you can change that easily by doing like s dot student name, and then s dot mark is equal to something something, and then you can just print it out again. So that is an easy one. Okay. This one is also fairly simple. Create a vehicle class with max speed and mileage instance attributes. So yeah, you can just sort of initialize it and leave it as it is. Right, you can have max speed is equal to mileage. Max speed is equal to 0, and then mileage is equal to 0, right? And then what you can also do is make it into instance variable, right? You can have this init function, right? For example, we can have this def init, right? And then self dot max speed is equal to 0, self dot mileage is equal to 0. And just to be clear here, if you actually have, let me try to explain this to you guys. If you try to do this and then you print, let's say for example, I'll make both of them equal to 1, all right? And then you just do print v dot max speed. You print v dot mileage, and then again you print vehicle. So if you just do class, right, you can directly get those class variables instead of treating it as an instance. So you can have vehicle dot mileage, and if you print forget the self, sorry about that. If you print it out, those ones are actually different, even though it has this exactly the same variable name, but those two are instance variables, and this is class variable. Okay, so those two are actually different. All right, so just keep in mind with that. Yeah, so that is that. Just be careful if you're thinking that we if it's called self.max speed, it will overwrite this to 1, then you're in a trouble, because it is actually not overwritten. It is still at 0, but it is just the instance. When you actually call this field in the instance, then it will actually give you what you have assigned in there. Okay, so yeah, that is this class. So the last one, define a website class which you need to pass in a URL and then a title to construct. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so what I need to do is also we sort of need a init function, right? And then according to the question, you will need URL title, right? And then you will need to do self URL is equal to URL, self title is equal to title, right? And then you'll sort of needs to pass in this. right? And I mean, so define it into a class. This works, right? But it is not in the same as whatever it is talked about in the question. So I will just modify my answer a little bit so that it actually demonstrate what it is. Okay, I'll demonstrate a question, and here, look at those. So we have an int function. We're passing in a URL and a title, right? So in this case, I am not making, I'm not branding for Google, but like, yeah, this is just a a frequent website that we're gonna visit, right? So we're just gonna pass in that URL and then pass in that title. And then if we call display, right, and then you just basically just printed it out, right? And then if we do change URL and then we pass in a new URL, then you can do self.url is equal to new URL, and then you can just print it out self.new new URL as self.url, right? And then after you change it, then you can try to display it again. Okay, so you can totally not have this. It is the same. Doesn't specify. You have to print it out after the change. But here is how it's being done. Okay, so yeah, that is all for Friday's review and Friday's exercise. So is there any questions? Anything that is not clear? I will wait, and I will wait until maybe 35 and see if there is any questions. If there is not, then I will go through the assignment solution. You guys are welcomed to discuss your solution and maybe send your own solution and sort of try to make me to look at and see if there is any problem. I enjoy looking over someone else's code, because I have my own thinking. You guys have your own thinking. And then I believe no two pieces of code are exactly the same, except that, you sort of just copied it or you just memorized it, right? So, yeah, that is that. So is there any questions on the assignment? Not the assignment. The lecture 8 as material before we actually move on to the assignment question. And then yeah, for those of you who do need credit, don't try to copy my code because it is so obvious and it will not end too well. Yeah, so yeah, just don't do that. And thinking can be taught. Code itself cannot. Okay, so that is that. So yeah, I don't see any questions. So I guess I will just start talking about the assignment. Okay, so question 1: find out if a given number is a prime number. Okay, so what is a prime number? Prime number is a number that can only be divided by itself and the number 1, right? So that is the definition of prime number. And then you can if you do a little bit more research, then you will think of this sort of corner case, right? Because we can have input as 1, input as 2, especially those two. So 1 is not a prime number, and then 2 is a prime number. So especially for this option 1, input 1, then we need to sort of accommodate, which just means in if else case, or if statement, right? So that is a question. And then hint, the most efficient solution, you will need to include a square root somewhere in your program, and then you can somehow you can sort of do mass dot square root, right? That works, and you can also do this thing that I talked about it. I don't know, on Thursday or on Wednesday. I don't exactly remember, but there is a thing called the power. It is just made of 2 multiplies. Then you can easily use those as as the square root function. Okay, so without any delay, let's actually get into the code. So what I did here is I just make those inputs into a list, right? So that I can actually use a for loop, iterate it. Programmers are lazy. You don't want to do like something like num is equal to q1 input 1, and then you just manually delete it and change it every time, right? So sometimes you sort of like lose track to your answers. So yeah, that is a way so that I figured that it is very easy to deal with those inputs and outputs, right? And then for outputs, you can just sort of see them, right? And if there is any problem. Okay, so that is that. So this is a for loop to iterate through every input. So that means we can ignore it, right? In terms of algorithm itself, or in terms of solving this problem itself, then this iterator, this outer loop can be not considered, right? So basically num here will just be a number, right? Any number can be like 1, 2, 9, 17, 97, 51, or whatever you want, okay? Those are specific input that I feel like it is interesting to look at. You can always add more inputs that you want, and then test out your program. And it is good to do so. Sometimes even though like I tried to make those input different, and then cover the whole aspect, there will be always some cases that one specific set of input does not tell you if the program is, if your program that you write is correct or wrong. Okay, so that is that. So always create your own inputs, and then the inputs that I gave you can be used as a reference. But yeah, make sure that you test yourself as well. Yeah, that is a good habit. Okay, so you can I can have a variable here. So is prime is equal to yes. I mean, you can also do as true or false, but since the output is yes or no, then I can just do it like this. Okay, so in default, is prime is yes. Okay, what does that mean? It means that we always treat a number as prime anyway at the first. Okay, and what it did here is that for this for loop is pretty important. For I, which is a iterator, you can have a range bracket 2 to so we're sort of starting from 2, right? Because you know, any number can be divisible by 1, so there is no meaning to check 1, right? And then you know, we start with 2, right? If any number is even, right, so it is divisible by 2, right? So that we can ignore it. Those numbers are you know, can have the potential to be a prime number, right? Is that correct? So yeah, this square root thing, I believe I have already mentioned it, why it works, and you know, why it is the most efficient efficient way to do this. But yeah, because the reason behind it is you know, to get those two products, right, to get those factors, or check if it's a prime number, then if you, right, and then you're sort of have to do the square root, because you know, square root of that, and then square is just the number itself, right? So you only have to loop until the square root to do anything you want, and then the rest you don't have to do it. I mean, you can if you want, but this is time consuming, and then there is no purpose of doing this extra work, right? So yeah, the idea is that, you know, if you found anything in that range, you can use num mod I is equal to 0, right? So yeah, you can have this idea. Maybe you can check if it is divisible by 2, right? 2 first. So we are ruling out all the even number, and then you know, if it is divisible by 3 in this case, you know, 3, yeah, maybe it's not so uh, yeah, maybe it could be 9, right? You know, 9 divided mod 3 is just equal to 0 or something like that, right? So it keeps checking and checking until the range is up, right? And then you just break out of that loop. If there is any case that you know, num percent I is equal to 0, then you just sort of change this as a prime is equal to no, and then break out, right? Okay, so that is the story of yeah, that is the story. And then yeah, so if num is equal to 1, so in this case, this is a special case that I was talking about. So we have a special case, which if num is equal to 1, then it will be no again. Because what happened is, if num is equal to 1, then this range, like this for loop, will just never be get into, right? Because it's actually start from 2, right? But the num is actually just 1, right? So the square root of 1 is just 1, and then it is basically like range 2 to 2, right? So there is actually no meaning to this. So we have to add a special case. And, you know, in terms of, is it a special? It is a special case, right? 1 is not any kind of prime number, right? So that is a definition that you should already know. Okay, so yeah, that is that is the question 1. If you run this code, oops, I will have to run the first cell of the code first. And then yeah, so if I run this piece of code, you can see the answer is exactly the same. No, yes, no, yes, yes, no. Okay, so that is question one. I will take up any question that you have. If you don't say anything, I am assuming there's no question. And yeah, this is the idea. So remember the factor exercise. This is more or less similar, right? Because because factor means that you have to find all the factors of one specific number, right? But in this case, prime here, you will only need to find one factor that is different than one in itself, right? So, it can be similar. Depends on how you think about it, right? Okay. So, is there any questions? Okay. It seems like there is no questions. Okay, I'll wait until like 49. And then I will continue to question two. And also, yeah, I just want to get feedback from you guys. So for whoever have already finished or tried the assignment one, what is like the difficult value, right? Like difficulty level. Is it like really hard, or is it a little bit hard, or is it just so handleable, or maybe it is on the easy side? So yeah, I'm just wondering, like, what you guys are feeling about this. All right. No, still nobody wants to talk. Okay. Okay, I guess then I will go into question two. So what is question two? So question two is that you're given a string of item prices. So it's like item and prices, and then you will required to convert them into a dictionary. The string contains place. The string consists of space, characters, and numbers, right? But space are just those white spaces, and characters and numbers are always good to check. Um, yeah, and then when thinking of there will be space in the string, then the first thing you will think of is a method called walk, right? So not walk, split, right? So the first thing you will think about is a split. Um, so yeah, it will actually split out all the spaces, and then split out all the spaces and into a list, right? And then if you try to print out here, I can do this. You can do print s, and then okay. Oh, every time I forgot to run the inputs. Okay, if I try to print this, then you know, a lie, and then you just print out, right? And then print s, and then this is being printed out, and then it is split it into a list. What I will do is then after I split them into a list, then I create a dictionary that is sort of empty. I don't actually need this variable here, so let me delete that. So you create a dictionary that is empty. You can call it D or whatever you want, and then for I in range. So this is a little tricky here. It is a list thing, right? So for I in range 0 to length s, this guarantees you to loop through the entire list, right? Because length of s is always one larger than the list largest index, right? So for example, if your length is 9, if your length is 10, right, the largest index will be 9 because it is basically from 0 to 9, right? And then because a range function in Python is not including right? So if the length is 10, then it will actually go to 9 and then stop, right? So that is the range function. And then comma 2 just means step 2, okay? Maybe you can try to do it using step 1 as well. There will be a way to do it as well. You might need some extra technique to keep track of like whether it is a key or a value, but you can use a existing thing called just step 2, right? And then what you can do is D, right? D, and then if you do the square bracket here, it means a whatever key, right? So the key will be S square bracket I, right? Because I is like 0 to 4, 8, something like that. And then if you can see this, then those keys are actually having this feature of, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, right? So 0, 2, and then 3, and then 4, right? So you can do something like this, right? And then you can do key is equal to this value here, right? So I is plus 1. When I is 0, then I plus 1 is just 9.2 string. When I is equal to 2, then you know the value will just be 5.8, and then so on and so forth, something like that, right? And that is a question for that is the answer or the solution for question 2. Okay, so after I try to print this out, and you have two dictionaries, right? You have a cars or tool, cars or Xboxes or gaming consoles, and then you have this as dictionary itself. So in terms of this, is there any sort of questions, or anyone wants to share their code and try to make me to sort of analyze it and see if there is anything. Okay. Anything that before I continue? Okay. You guys seems to be pretty smart and knows all the ways to solve questions. That is great as well. Okay, so leap year. Question 3 is about leap year, and then it is sort of like printing out all the years from 19,000 to 21,000. 2100, right? 1900 to 1900 to 2100, and replace the years that are leap year with the string leap year. Okay, and then a little bit of background about leap year. So this rule is that if a year is divisible by 100 but not divisible by 400, then it is not a leap year. Other than that, it is leap year. So that means that if it is divided by divisible by 400, then it is a leap year. If it is not divisible by 400, then you just print normal. If it is not divided by 400, then you can also check that if it is divisible by 100, right? So years like, uh, 1019, for example. No, like 1900, for example, right? And then if you try to do that, then it is divisible by 100, but not 400, right? So the first leap year is actually skipped. Okay, so but the year 2000, there it is divided by 400, though it is a leap year. Okay, and then the rest of the case is just divided by 4. If it's divided by 4, then it is a leap year. So that is easy to tell. Okay, and those will be the sample output, right? 19,000, 1900, sorry about that. 1901, 1902, blah, blah, blah. And then when it goes to 1904, it becomes leap year. Okay, so yeah. And then you just go on, and then if it is 2000, then it is leap year again. Then sort of reaching until the end. Well, that will be the 2100 will be a normal year instead of a leap year. Okay, so in terms of coding, the techniques are like this. So for I and range, 1900 and 2101. And the reason I do that is, the left is included, right? It is not included. I actually want to loop to 2100. So I cannot just stop there. I have to keep move forward by 1 so that it is included. And then here is just the logic control. If I is divided by 400, if it is equal to 0, then okay. Yeah. So else if the I is divisible by 100, then you just print out normally, right? And if it is divisible. But if it is divisible by 4, because you might think that if divided by 400 is sort of similar to divided by 4, but it is actually different, right? And then, divisible by 100 case is not included. Well, it is sort of included, but the else if is in front of the second else if, right? So if you actually exchange the order from after this to like before this, then you're in a trouble because you know the year with that are divisible by 100 will be written as leap year as well. So that is something that you don't want to see. Okay. Yeah, and then else you just print out whatever is yeah, you just print out whatever number it is. Okay, so yeah, this is the thing that I print out. So there's sort of like 1900, and it is okay. 1901, okay. And then all the way until 1904, that is a leap year, right? And then you're just sort of skipping, and then the 4 year at once, right? And then yeah, this year 2000 and divisible by 400, so it is a leap year. Okay. All right. So, is there any kind of question to this assignment, or to this question, specific question, the leap year question? I will wait until 11:05 to actually continue uh, the next example. Okay, so yeah, since there is no question, then I will move forward to question 4. So yeah, question 4 is also a easy one. Um, so you're given a point that is x and y, and you're just sort of figuring out what are their coordinates in the Cartesian plan, right? And then I have give you test cases like origin or x value or y value. So those ones, when you're trying to write program, it is something that you can be able to do, right? And then and here is the solution. Oops. Seems like I have too much first case, so I'll just delete one. Okay, so the points, we're just doing the same thing. We are taking in, those points, and then actually, print it out. Print it out. For example, if x is equal to y, x is equal to 0, and then y equal to 0, then you just print origin, right? And other than that, if x is equal to 0, then it is on y-axis, right? Because think about it, if x is equal to 0, then you can only move on a vertical line, right? And then if y is equal to 0, then it is the same. You can only move on the horizontal line, so it is x-axis, right? And then you're just defining those ones for all 4 quadrant, right? So if x is larger than 0, y is larger than 0, then I will be the first. I will be first quadrant, and then x is less than 0, y is larger than 0, then it is the second quadrant. S less than 0, y less than 0, third quadrant. S larger than 0, y less than 0, it is the fourth quadrant. Okay, so after having all those if else cases, then you just sort of print out all the answers, right? And then there's a thing here. So points, right? Points are actually tuples, right? Because think about this, those are tuples. And then remember, how do we actually unpack? Unpack is just means that you have a bunch of variable in a tuple, and then you can wait for if you have a bunch of numbers in your tuple, then you can just expect how many numbers of variables to actually unpack it, right? So if in this case there's 2 variables in the tuple, then you will just use 2 variables to unpack it. Okay. So that is question 4. If there is no question, then I will move on to question 5. I will wait until 11:10 to talk about question 5. Okay, so I will move on to question 5. So question 5 is given a binary number and then you can calculate its value in decimal. Okay, so the way I approach this, so just explain you what those binary numbers are. Binary numbers are just, for example, if it is 1 and 1, then you read from right to left. Okay, so this is 1, so it means 1 times 2 to the power of 0, and then 0 means 0 times 2 to the power of 1, and then the first one, which is this one here, means 1 times 2 to the power of 2, which means 1 plus 0 plus 4 is equal to 5. Okay, and then a more complicated example, 1 0 0 1 0, just doing the same thing. 0 times 2 to the 0, 1 times 2 to 1, 0 times 2 to 2, 0 times 2 to 3, and then 1 times 2 to 4, which gives you 18 in total. Okay, then those given inputs are actually, I would say it is decimal numbers, but it's representing a binary value. And then I actually want it to convert to an actual number in decimal instead of those numbers. Okay, so what can we do? There, I believe there can be different ways, but one way that I figure it is good to do is to use a list, to use a string. Sorry about that. But string is more or less lists, so it doesn't actually matter. Okay, so for binary in binaries, right? Binary is just a list of integers that is used for input, and then for binary in binaries means for each binary number, right? And then I have a value. I have a variable called binary string, which just stores the string version of that binary, right? And then I have an answer, right? So answer just means that it is a temporary variable to keep track of how many digits that you have calculated, and then you can just add it up there, right? So yeah, here for I in range length of binary string. In this case, binary string has the length 7, so I will just be from 0 to 6, right? And then the reason of this sort of indexing is that think about this: if you have a 5-bit here, so if you have a 5-bit integer, then the highest bit will be 2 to the power of 4 instead of 2 to the power of 5, because you have a 2 to the power of 0. Get it? So yeah, you have, so that is the reason we only loop until the length of the binary string. Okay, and then after you created this loop, then you can have this answer plus or equal, right? So every digit that you count, right? It could be 1, it could be 0, or anything. But any digit that you count, you can do you can add them up, right? So the first one will be we can sort of just convert that specific character again, and then we just use string for an index, right? You can just use indexing for the string, right? And then yeah, after you do the index and then you do binary conversion, that is not painful as well. Binary a character conversion is just to make a character into a person. Yeah, so yeah, that is character conversion. Makes a character into an integer. Okay, so that is that. And then you just multiply 2 to the power of something, right? And then think of what that something is. Think about it. And then figure out the reason why do I actually, um, subtract 1 here. Good. Yeah, so if any of you have think about it, it's good. If you have not yet, I will explain it. So yeah, the length of the binary string, for example, for a 10-bit binary, it will be 10, right? Because as long as there is 100 bits, then this this length bracket binary string has that length, right? And then you are supposed to subtract 1 because your I starts from 0, right? And you know, if you do length minus I, then the array will be out of bound, right? Because or well yeah, the array will be out of bound, but this is in this specific case it will not be the problem. It will be the problem that oops. It will be the problem that you actually get a much larger number than it should be, right? So 1 is actually converted to 2. 1 is actually converted to like 1010. So you will have to subtract 1 to make sure your code makes sense. Okay, so yeah, after you do this subtract, you do the answer. You get the answer by adding all those subtracts, and then that question is done. Okay, so that is that. I will give you until 11:20 to like maybe take a break, or if there is any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. Okay, so I don't think there is any question. I will get into today's lecture. Today's lecture should be short than usual because you know this is we have talked about assignments, and then you know we can just do try to figure out those assignments, and you know some of those can be like if after you see the solution you can read it yourself, or if you have a better one propose. Okay, so lecture 9. In lecture 9 we're still talking about classes, and in fact there will be multiple classes, quite a few classes to talk about this class or object, but the variable, you know, there's the idea of a member variable, right? And then the member variable is defined in the class and it belongs to the class itself, right? So it is a local variable to the class, right? So yeah, this is the idea that I just showed you guys. So detail is equal to, for example, you can have Toronto, and then you can have a whatever postal code, and then you can have a function called in info and self. But if you try to print like detail directly, it will give you an error. Right, it's just connecting to the notebook. But here it will give you an error because it says detail is not defined, right? There's no name called detail. And what happened is right after, if you don't put in any sort of address detail directly, you call it by class, it works perfectly. Okay, so what you can do is you print address, which is a uppercase, and address, and then that detail, or the other one, the postal code. Yeah, and so that is that. So you print out address detail, then it gives you Toronto. You call this address.info, and then you gives you Toronto, and then it gives you postal code, right? And then if you sort of try to change that, it works as well, right? So you do address.info, and then it prints out, right? And then here class record. Um, so this piece of code. This is just showing you that it is different for an instance member variable and a class member variable, right? So if you do rc.record and then you print rc.item, and you print rc.date, then you can still access it, right? And then use self, right? But if you try to change that, yeah, and then if you do this, you do class dot item, and then you just directly change this by using a class, then you can also do that. So as you can see here, this here mouse is changed into keyboard, and then this record is changed. The date has been changed as well. Okay, so those are the idea of member variable, and here we are sort of illustrating a difference between a variable and an instance variable. And here it says if you try to assign or update a variable using self dot blah 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 blah, then you will define a new instance variable instead of overriding the class variable. And what that means is that if you have an inventory, and then if you have an item is equal to mouse, then and then quantity is equal to 2000, then you do def change, and then you can do self the item is equal to item, and self the quantity is equal to quantity. And then what happened is if you create a inventory instance, and then you call this function change. In this case, you pass in monitor and 500, and then you can totally do iv the item and iv the quantity, and will give you monitor and 500, right? Because you just changed it. But if you try to access it through the class, so do inventory.item and then inventory.quantity, then those two are remain unchanged, right? So here, that means there is a difference between class variable and instance variable. Okay, and then the way you want to change a class variable is that you call it directly from the class. Okay, so it is like inventory.item and then inventory.quantity and blah blah blah. You change that, you print it, it is working now. Okay. Oh, I have not run this. Okay, so this is good. So use property function to define a property. So what happened is there is a function called property, and then it has 4 parameters. And then fget is for a getter, fset is for a setter, del, fdel is for delete, and then doc is for documentation. Okay. Okay, and then for those of you who are not familiar with getter or setter, I can actually talk about it later, but to just give you an idea is that, you know, once you make one of your variable private, right? Private means that it is not able to seen by, you know, other people, then you know, it starts to get harder. But yeah, but you sort of need a getter or a setter that is you know, acting as the interface of like exchanging information between inside word and outside word. Okay, so that is the idea for get for getter, and then set for a setter. Okay, and then yeah. Um, yeah, when we're going to deeper into today's lecture, we will explain about it. Okay, so what you can do is you can pass in 0 to 4 parameters. You can pass in nothing, and you can pass in you know, everything. Okay, so if you don't pass in any sorts of variable, that you know, I mean parameters, then it means basically it means that it is not readable and not writable. So I don't know what is the meaning of that. Maybe it is just, you know, purely private and then don't want anyone to access it except then the, you know, the person that is working on this class right now, which is the root user. Okay, so one means readable, right? So you have a getter function, but not a setter function. So that means you know how to get it, but you don't know how to set it, right? So so for example, if I have a variable called item, you know how what is the item? For example, the item is like an apple or orange, right? And then if you want to change that field into something like peach, right? And then you cannot do that because you don't have a setter, right? And then the third parameter is you know, readable, writable, and deletable, right? And it is provided a function, and then it sort of needs to delete um, delete that specific property. And then four parameters means that there is also document. So like documentation is provided. All right. So we have this class rectangle, right? And then we have a init function. This init function is just to initialize this rectangle. And then there's a function called set size, which is like taking self and then a size. And then it provides sort of a setter. The idea is that self dot comma width, and then self comma height is equal to size. Okay, and then get size just gives you returns your self dot width and self dot height in a tuple. Okay, and then delete size self, it is just a delete method. It is in this case it will be self dot height and self dot weight is equal to 0, 0, and then in this case 0 does not work. So if you put only 1 0, then cannot unpack non-zero objects, right? So you sort of have to add a 0 in there. Okay, so that is that. And then yeah, so in here we can do size equal to property. So what this does is that there's a size, and then it is sort of a variable, and then you're calling this method property, which gives that it has a get size, you have a set size, right, and then you have a delete size. Those three functions are the function those functions that we have defined it ourselves and then before, and then this is the documentation for this property. Right, and then you can go step by step. Print rectangle dot size, and then that is the documentation on a specific variable that it says used to describe how large is the rectangle. Okay, and then you can do help, and then help on property. Then gives you this documentation as well. Let me run this again. Yeah, so it gives me documentation as well. So rect is equal to rectangle 4, 3. Then initialize this rectangle, right? And then if you want to just literally print out the rect.size, then it is good, right? And if you sort of try to resize it, you can do rect.size is equal to 9,7. Then if you print the width and then you print the height, then it is changed to 9,7. But a better way to do it is but like a better way to do it is use set size, right? But since the way that it is defined, sometimes if I imagine this could be those parameters could be like width and height, it will be better. But this works as well. This is just making this entire thing a square, right? Because it has the same width and the same height. But yeah, you can totally do this. And then after print out, then 9 and 7 are out. And then if I try to delete direct size, then self size and self height is equal to 0. Then once you try to print it out, it is indeed 0, right? So that is how do we use this property function to define a property. Okay, so from other examples can be something like this. So you can have a class of users, and then you have created a definition or like a constructor in this case, like first name will equals to self first is equal to first, self the last is equal to last, and then you have this function called get full name, which just gives you this self the first and then self the last separate by a comma. And then you can have another function called set full name, which accepts the full name and then split it into first name and the last name. So, and then you call this function called property, and then by providing this get full name and then set full name, then you can, this is the prototype of this class is sort of done, right? And then what you can do is you can do u equals to user, and then you just sort of pass in, array. This is my name, and then after you print out the full name, then it is just to be printed out with a comma, right? And then if you want to change it, so u dot full name is equal to something something, and then you just print out first and then last, then you can see it is going through the setter, and then it is doing what a setter should do. Then it is after you print out, it actually indeed proved that the setter is doing its job. So we can imagine that the setter is behaving correctly. Okay, so that is that. So what you can also do is, oh, I forgot one thing here. Property. Yeah, what you can what you can also do here is you can use a function decorator, right? We have talked about the function decorator on yesterday. We are not yesterday, but on Friday, and we sort of reviewed it a bit today as well. So we are now trying to actually use it, right? So you can have this add property, and then you just sort of pass, you use this add property to actually, add the property of this variable called, I think this variable is underscore state, right? Instead of a normal state, it is called an underscore state, right? And then you can have a at. Then after you sort of defined that variable, and then you just do state dot setter, and then you have this set. So you created a setter function, and then what you can do here is you can pass in a value, and then the value, if the value is alive, then this cell is alive. Otherwise, this cell is dead, right? So yeah, it's just not functioning anymore. Okay, and then so as you can see that add property, at property just always gives you like if you do add property, that it will always give you the like whatever is down there, it is a getter for a specific variable or like a field, right? And then yeah, so as I wrote here, we use at property to decorate function, decorate a state function, so that it becomes greater function of the state property. Then there is this property called state, whether makes the state method to state method the setter for underscore state property, and then use at state property to decorate is that function, and makes it easier to get to makes it the getter for the makes it the getter for let me add this here. Getter for is that function. Getter for like state, right? And then in this case, there is also this option called if you really wants to do it. Oops. Yeah, it is a bit laggy. So if you really wants to do it, then you can have this decorator called is that dot setter, right? So this is those function are this is the function name. So that is why you do at state dot setter, right? And then this if you if you use property to decorate this is that function, then what you need to do is to add is that dot setter as well, right? And then but we decide not to use it, and so that make this is that property read only. Okay, so that is the function decorator way. All right, so encapsulation. So that is a new, it is a pretty new idea. Oh, not it is a pretty new idea, but it's a new section or a large pillar of the object-oriented world. And yeah, I think if you remember that video I played on Friday, yeah, you can remember that encapsulation is a big one. So what it does, I written it in Chinese though, so that means that the information of a specific class or instance are lived inside of a function. Not live inside a function, live inside a class or object, right? And then it does not allow outsiders, which is like can be a program, right? It can be a piece of code or something to directly access the inside information of that object, right? So it's like 不允许外部的程序直接访问对象的内部信息，而是说通过这个该对象或者说是该类提供的这一些类方法，一些实例方法来这个实现对内部信息的操作访问。那么这些方法指的是什么呢？Specifically 可以说是getter and setter。Right, and then getter 是什么意思呢？比如说，我有一个 field， 对吧？我有一个 field in the class，比如说，你看这个 user， 如果说我有一个 field 叫 name， 但是这个 name 呢，我不想让别人知道，或者说呢，我不想让别人直接知道，比如说你没有办法用 u 点 name 来获取你这个 name， 而是必须要通过我提供给你的函数叫做 get name，对吧？这里比如说这里有一个 get name，那么我必须要通过这个方法才可以获得这个函数，不然的话是不可以的，好吧？那么 encapsulation 呢，大概就是这么样个意思。那么它的用途是什么呢？可能说感觉好像没有什么太大用处，反正就是，对吧？它反正那个 field 还是在那儿，你可以 access 它，对吧？但是呢，就是说，如果 project 变得越来越大，或者说，比如说这是某个公司的软件，乱七八糟的，对吧？你肯定不会想要让别的公司，对吧？直接去 access 你的 source code，对吧？去直接access 你的 source code，去直接把你这个所有的信息全部就是被人家看光光，对吧？这个也不大好，所以说，比如说这好处的第一点就是隐藏类的实现细节，对吧？你比如说有一些乱七八糟的这个细节，比如说你这个function 是如何运作的啊，乱七八糟的，这样的话它就会被隐藏掉，对吧？那这样的话就一般的这个 programmer 基本上就看不见了，对吧？或者其他的 user 就看不见了。那么就是说，还有一个，让使用者只能通过事先预定的方法来访问数据，并限制不合理的访问，那就是我所谓说的 getter 和 setter，对吧？那么就是你 get 这个东西，你只能通过我这个 get function 来就是只能通过 getter 来这个获取这个信息，其他的信息一概不给其他的信息没有权限，概不给。对吧？这样的话，那你就可以限制谁可以用啊，对吧？谁不可以用，对吧？用什么方式来访问数据，这些都是比较重要的，对吧？那么还有就是可以进行数据调查，保护对象的完整性，对吧？然后你也可以修改它，对吧？然后代码的这个可维护性也会相对而言提高，对吧？然后还会隐藏这种乱七八糟的细节，对吧？然后暴露其中的一些操作用来操作的方法，然后让这些个方法呢，来实现对数据的安全访问，对吧？来实现这个数据的操作。OK，so，然后我们要 talk about 双下划线，就是说我们之前看到了有一些就是两边都有下划线，这些呢我们还是会留到以后再说。我们今天只讲一个什么 case？我们今天只讲一个，就是在函数名前面或者在变量名前面有双下划线。双下划线是什么意思呢？双下划线，如果说你学过 Java 的话，那个东西叫做 private，对吧？那么是什么意思？就是说我这个东西啊，你如果去 direct access it，就比如说，对我现在创建一个这个东西叫做u 点 user， 对吧？那我把 user 创建好了之后呢，你要是这么 print，那是没有的。User has no attribute 下划线 name， 对吧？那你会说这什么情况，对吧？我 analyze 它我 initialize 它了，对吧？然后这个东西怎么说呢？我 get 不到它，咋办？对吧？那么就是说这东西呢，其实是被隐藏掉了，就是说你没有办法这样 direct access 它，但是呢，你可以怎么 access？你可以这个 user 点 get name， 你这么 access 它，那它就给你，那它就给你user has no attribute user name， 这个目前还是就是说还没有 initialize 它，所以说还没有 set 它，那它就 get 不到，你说是吧？就是说它如果因为这里是没有 init 这个 function，所以说呢目前来说还没有这个， 那我们先稍微缓一缓，好吧？有点急了。那么你比如说 user 点 name 等于我再把这个改回去，user 点 name 等于 fk， 对吧？你可以说现在如果尝试 set 它的话，它会给一个 arrow 这样吧，我们先 analyze 一下这个 code， 就是说双下划线目，对。那前面说了这么多，其实就是为了告诉你，双下划线的目的呢，其实是让你把这个 function 或者这个 variable 隐藏掉，只能通过这些个 function 来 get 或者 set 它，对吧？但是就最好不要通过其他的方法来那个的。OK， 那对，如果说比如说这个 get name， 这个 get name 非常简单，就是直接把这个 self 的 name， 然后把它 return 出来。set name 就是说这里当然这里有个 condition， 就是说if length of a name is less than 3 or length of name is larger than 8, right? So it has to be sort of between the 3 character and 8 characters. And then this is something new, but you don't have to know. But this is just the idea of raising an arrow, right? So this arrow is basically means that you're defining an arrow yourself, and then you're just defining out the arrow message yourself as well, right? So it is basically raise an arrow, right? So just gives you an arrow. That is what that means. And then as you can see here, it is a value arrow because it raises the value arrow, and then the message's name length needs to be 3 to 8, right? And then if no arrow is raised, then it just set the name. Okay, and then name equal to property, get name and set name. So that just makes it a property. Okay. And then you can also have those age, and then self age is age, and age is equal to property, blah blah blah, right? And then you can define this get age and set age. Okay, so that is code, and I have already showed you that is FK. So you can do this. U.name is equal to Python, and U.age is equal to 25. And then I think what happened is, okay, I think what happened is that we sort of it just calls the setter function, right? And then it just pass in this name or this age here, and then it just sets it. And then after you print it out, you can actually get it. Okay, and then that is that. And this is this function here, and if you do, yeah, and then if I just want to make a comment, you can also do get name, right? And then you can do get age, right? And then this basically is the same. Okay, so but if you have this, this is u.hide, right? And then if you try to print, if you try to run this code, because we have a function like this, and then we just directly call it, we're thinking of, this could be, actually be called, but the user object has no attribute, underscore hide. And that means it is giving you sort of this hiding, right? Hiding from hiding from like other people to directly access it. But this is a way to hide yourself. But and us as advanced programmers, what Python did is that in front of this hide function, so you have this double underscore hide function, it actually adds a underscore user. Okay, so what happened is that you can actually see those those private values by this way, in this way. Okay, so if you actually add a underscore user, this function is called, right, display hide method, because it says print display hide method, right? So this is actually called. So as I have to make this comment here, there is no true hiding in Python. It is just that the compiler will just add a underscore user in front of the method or in front of the field, so that you can, so actually you can actually access it using this. But for those of programmers who don't know about it, if they don't add this, then you know it is sort of hidden. Okay, and then you can also try to access class variable using this method. So we have this u dot user name, and then you can assign it like into whatever you want, and question mark, and then you just print out u dot name, and then it is actually changed. Okay, so yeah, that is it for today's lecture. That is everything. I did not leave any sort of exercise today for you guys. I am expecting you guys to slowly take in whatever exercise is on lecture 8, and especially the our assignment, right? Since I talked about the assignment today, some of you might be curious about how you did it. Some of you might not be able to solve it by yourself. But after today, I just hope that if you can sort of try to fix it, or you can rewrite it if you have any new ideas. But that is my plan. I will leave more questions tomorrow. But yeah, that is the idea. Yeah, so that will be all for today's lecture. Is there any question or concerns before I end today's lecture? Anything else before I close today? Last call, I will just wait until like 12:02 or 12:03. No? Okay. Yeah, so far no one had questions. All right. I guess if there is no one that have any questions, then I will just conclude today's lecture. All right. Everyone have a nice day. whoever needs the credit, please hand in the assignment as soon as possible. Yeah, so that is my comment. All right, everyone, have a good day, and I will see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good
Yeah,
day.
see you. Bye.